Hey guys, Churchy here. So this video is basically going to be me sharing my thoughts about Cyberpunk 2077 version 2.0 after having played for about 50 hours. So I haven't played since around launch. I did a playthrough originally around launch. So here and there, I might sort of end up mentioning things that were added to the game before the 2.0 update, but it's still just things that I thought were cool. And I've only played the first few missions in Phantom Liberty, which I mostly just did to unlock the relic abilities, and they're kind of a cool little extra thing. And I'm also really liking the clothing that you can get access to. And as far as the storytelling and the scale and stuff of Phantom Liberty, it just kind of feels like they're really just pushing it even more, just in terms of like the action and scale and stuff. So basically, yeah, it's pretty cool from what I've experienced so far. But that's not really the focus of this video. I'm kind of saving that for later as like my big hurrah and kind of send off to Cyberpunk before I kind of finish off the game. It'll be the last thing I kind of do before the final quest. Another thing is that some footage, you might see it dip below 60 FPS in this video, but that's because I wanted to test some of the path tracing stuff, but my rig isn't really quite up to scruff for that. So most of that footage was sort of earlier on when I was playing, before I kind of opted to turn path tracing off because the performance hit is pretty massive. So yeah, if you do notice some footage that looks really, really nice, but it seems a bit low on the frame rate side, that's probably footage that has the path tracing on. But the game looks really awesome anyway with how I had it set up, in my opinion. I've just been using like ultra ray tracing and all that, and it's looking pretty nice. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about, I'm just going to get the bad stuff out of the way because I don't really have a lot of bad stuff to say, to be honest. Some of the bad stuff was quite annoying, I will say that. To start with, I did have a couple of crashes. One of them I narrowed down to being a jump attack with the katana, and what was causing it, once I read online, I basically found that it was the airstrike mod on the katana causing the crash to happen. So airstrike is one of the weapon mods. I also had the photo mode was crashing. I'm pretty sure that was something to do with the path tracing. And then another thing was causing crashing after this. So basically I had this period of like multiple hours over a few days where I was just crashing a bunch, and I had to like narrow down and diagnose what was causing all the crashes and then turn stuff off. Another thing online that people said was turn off AMD SMT. That wasn't the problem for me. I've got it back on and it's fine, but I know some people have had a problem with that. For me, the other thing that was causing crashes, and I have no idea why it was turned on by default, was cross-platform save. So there was cross-platform saving and that was flicked on. And once I turned that off, that removed crashes completely, basically, for me. I've had like one crash since then. And I've played for like massive play sessions of like 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, and had no issues. The other annoying little issue I had was the blue glitch effect that comes onto the screen after some quests that actually gets stuck on. Again, looking up online what was causing it, it seems in one of the quests there's an option where you're talking to Johnny Silverhand and you basically say, "You're fucked in the head worse than me." And if you say that, then that causes the issue. There were some other minor issues here as well, but awesomely enough, they're already patching some of these issues. Like the blue screen glitch effect thing, that's been patched. Another weird issue was some destroyed Night City Police Department vehicles would be rolling around with the police officers in them, and it's like a burnt out, blown up vehicle with no wheels. That was another weird one. They've fixed that. And a whole pile of other little weird things. So it's good to see that they're already on top of patching it and fixing it. And that's basically the majority of bad stuff. I will mention like a couple of other minor things as I talk about the good stuff, because it's not really bad. It's just sort of slight improvements or slight things that bring things down a little bit. It's not actually bad as such. So yeah, let's talk about the good. The city, man. Let's talk about Night City. Night City is gorgeous. It is so damn... man. It's one of the best cities I think I've seen in a video game. It's really quite dense with just like layered alleyways and streets and roads. Just kind of the overall layout of the architecture and the streets and everything, and the variations that you see between the different parts of the city, like the different districts and stuff. All of that's really great. Like, it's all very distinct. You can tell sort of which part of the city you're in most of the time. And they've just done a really good job of building what feels like an actual city. Like, so, I mean, I remember being impressed by that when I first played, but it's even more so now for some reason. It just really, which might come into some of it, like how gorgeous some of the graphics and stuff look, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, so overall that kind of aspect of the city is really, really damn good. A slight weakness to the city, I would say, is that overall it's still mostly kind of a facade or a backdrop for the stories. But man, damn, is it a good looking one. It is gorgeous. But what I'm sort of getting at is that a lot of the buildings are kind of, you can't enter them and you can't really interact with a lot of stuff out in the world. Most of the time you're kind of just beyond doing the main quests and the main jobs and the side jobs, and interacting with shops, or just doing the kind of combat loop that you can get into with the like NCPD scans and all that, and side gigs and all that. There's not really a great deal of interactivity. It's sort of, and also like AI and their routines and everything are fairly basic. So the reason I'd say it's a slight weakness is there's just not that, it's not like super deep in terms of like a very deep, rich sense of exploration beyond just exploring the city. Like, there's not a lot of super interesting quests and stuff to find. You basically find them by directly going to them, if that kind of makes sense. And I guess you will kind of occasionally stumble across them, but I feel like there's just not that extra layer, and there's not, and all the places that you kind of go, it's all tailored to the quests that you're doing, which is fine, and it does a great job of that, and I will talk more about that soon. But I don't know, there's just something, there's like a tiny little element that's missing, that it's things like you might see in like Red Dead Redemption or something, like those little extra layers of like AI interest and interactivity and stuff that just aren't quite there. But it is still, you know, it's better than some other games. It's not like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just sort of a slight weakness in my opinion. But also there, as far as like going back in the other direction, there are sort of a few more little interactable things now, especially with more apartments. I think that was added in an earlier update, the additional apartments and stuff. But yeah, there's just like, you know, occasionally there's spots where you can like, well, with the apartments, you can like play guitar and stuff, and you can like have a drink or whatever. Just little things like that. And you can do some of that in a couple of locations around Night City as well, like go into one of the clubs and dance and stuff. Little elements like that I quite like. They just kind of add that little bit more, that little extra layer of immersion, which is quite nice. And also, I have to say, it is nice to have a few apartment options. I just ended up buying them all. Again, it's the same kind of thing. It's like a tiny, tiny element of the game, but it does wonders for immersion, for how small it is, because you're just like, hey, I've got this other place I can go to and hang out in and look out down at the streets on and stuff. The new police system also makes the world more engaging, and that's another thing I will talk about as I get a bit further in. But it's a lot better than it was. I'll say that much for now. Another thing which, again, this is sort of what... This isn't really a weakness, but it's just there's not a huge variety of activities that you can kind of do gameplay wise, but the thing is that the activities that you do, they all play into the strengths of the game, and those strengths are basically like being very stylish and just having like epic combat, and sort of having the option as well to be basically a stealthy ghost that just runs around hacking things, and it's all just things that make you as the player feel really badass. The game does a great job of all that. So the activities is what I'm talking about here, is like the NCPD scanner. That's basically what you do if you want just straight up combat. You can just run around and fight gangsters basically. Then there's the gigs, which is sort of if you want some more interesting objectives. Different fixes will call up with different gigs when you go near the location where the gig is, and it'll be things like steal something, or rescue someone, or kill a target, or just things like that. But you can kind of approach it in a couple of different ways. So you can just run in, guns blazing, or you might decide to actually be very stealthy about it. And sometimes if you are stealthy, there'll be certain jobs, like certain side gigs, where you'll get extra credits when you complete it if you have done it stealthily without setting off alarms and stuff. So that's quite cool. Then there's cyber psychos, and they're kind of usually a bit of a twist on the gameplay because they've got cybernetic hardware. Basically, they'll usually have some kind of extra quirk or ability or abilities, just something that they're doing beyond just being a normal gangster. So that can be quite interesting too. And then side jobs and main jobs, or just the stories in the game. They're kind of like another category entirely, but all those basic things that I was talking about there, where you're kind of like running around the world interacting with these things, it's all very much just like stealth or combat. Occasionally there's options to like persuade someone or whatever, but it's focused in terms of like what you're actually doing and the scope of what you can do in the game. It's fairly focused, but it's done really, really damn well. And it feels really, really good. Side jobs and main jobs, and just the stories in the game, all of those, they're really solid. And they can be very, very interesting at times. Even some of the side gigs can be kind of a bit interesting as well. Not quite as good as the side jobs and main jobs, but yeah, CD Projekt Red have always just done like really nice storytelling, in my opinion. But yeah, basically you kind of will get to just interact with like a bunch of interesting characters, and you're gonna just get to like experience a bunch of really cool stories. I kind of don't want to give details, but like, because there's just so many cool little stories and moments, and because of the first person camera and that, and I mean you can get a third person camera mod as well, but the first person camera, I feel like they've done a great job of like making that really immersive, and the way they tell the stories with that perspective is really, really cool. Another thing with this whole side of it is that because of the graphical updates, and because everything is just performing really well now and looking really good, it just adds that little extra bit of immersion. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it's just like, it's just taken it up that little tiny bit, but it's enough to be like even more immersed in the stories that are going on. Another interesting thing is that because of the scale and the interconnectedness of the city and all its districts and stuff, there's times when you're playing where you'll see certain buildings or certain districts off in the distance sometimes when you're just kind of driving around, and you'll kind of have memories of jobs, because the game is quite long and there's quite a lot of different side jobs and all sorts of things you can go and do. So there's times where you will just kind of have a memory of like another job that you did like hours and hours and hours ago. And it's really cool because as you do more of this, it just kind of anchors you more in the world. Because because you're just still driving around doing jobs, but you're like seeing where you were and where where you did something in the past. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's really cool. Another really great thing about the city, I know I'm going on about the city a bit, but it's just, the city is actually interesting enough to drive around and run around in, and it looks just beautiful enough, basically, that a lot of times it's actually fun enough to just kind of drive from A to B rather than fast traveling. Like, there is fast traveling options because you can go to these little like fast travel kiosks, and there's plenty of them spread around the city. But most of the time I just find myself just driving around or running around, and it's fun to put tunes on and just drive around and like see what you can see in the city, basically. So yeah, that again, it's just another aspect where the city works really well as a location. Another quick little thing in terms of that is just that with the city and its occupants, there's, with the AI particularly, like some of the NPCs and that, I've noticed, compared to when I first played, I've noticed less strange kind of spawn-ins and despawns and less strange AI behaviors. It does still happen. There is still weird little moments and weird little spawns and despawns and people being in weird spots and stuff, but it seems like it's a lot more under control than it was at launch, just from what I experienced. So, moving on to talking about just graphics and performance. Again, the game is just looking phenomenal at the moment, I would say, and it's just performing better. And with some of the path tracing stuff, it just seems like there's better detail in some of the distance stuff and the lighting and the reflections and everything. But yeah, just overall, I feel like even just in general, the performance feels better, and it feels a chunk better than I remember it being when I played at launch. And again, like I talked about earlier, just everything looking better and functioning better overall means that the overall experience is just that little bit, like it adds that little bit to it. But I think I've sort of sprinkled in talking about graphics while I was talking about the city as well, so I'll move on. Combat. Now this is an interesting one, and I have been having a lot of fun with this. So I think primarily one of the things that Cyberpunk does really, really well, it makes you feel like a badass, like straight up. The way you fight and the way the guns shoot and the sound effects and everything, just the whole experience makes you feel like a badass. The combat can be really fast and just furious and brutal. One thing is that it feels like it has a little bit of like a flow or a tempo to it. And sometimes that can make it feel a little bit sluggish. If you kind of mistime one of your shots or swing your weapon at a weird time and kind of miss an enemy or something, it can kind of feel like you're just getting overwhelmed really quickly. Part of this is especially noticeable early on in the game, because when you've got less perks and cyberware to fall back on in those early stages, it's much easier to kind of mess something up and then just kind of suddenly be in the middle of a bunch of enemies with not much of a way to get out, and you just kind of get stomped. But yeah, then overall, like, the combat does just feel, it feels so good, in my opinion. But the other thing that it does well, and I think this ties into the it's with the other points I talked about, like with making you feel badass, the fast, furious, brutal stuff, and that tempo. As you unlock more stuff, like more perks, and as you get more cyberware and you get better weapons and you kind of settle into the build that you're kind of building towards, it just starts to become more and more exciting, and you kind of start to meet the tempo that's required of the combat, and then all of it kind of combines into this just awesome experience, basically. And the first time you kind of get to experience how powerful your character's starting to become after you've got like a massive cyberware upgrade or something, or a really good new weapon. It all starts to feel so damn good. And that whole process, the way the character builds all kind of tie into combat and stuff, whether it's combat or you kind of go for the stealth route, just that whole aspect of the game just it feels really good, and it's a really, really satisfying process. So I have enjoyed that a lot. I've been playing basically as like a cyber samurai, so I've got heaps of cyberware. I'm running around with a katana and I'm just leaping through the air and just leaping on top of my enemies and running along the rooftops. And that's actually what I want to talk about now as well, which is the movement. So movement starts to feel incredible once you unlock some perks and get some nice cyberware. There's some specific ones on like the reflex tree where it just gives you stamina back for doing double jumps and stuff. Some of them are quite far in, like that one's like you need like 20 perk points in it. I mean, attribute points in it. But yeah, there's just perks that you unlock along the way in cyberware that like, it just makes running around the city and parkouring around the city basically really, really fun, because you can just start leaping from rooftops and climbing up things and jumping around like a madman, and you can cover like huge amounts of distance just by comboing leaps and stuff. Yeah, again, it's just another aspect that feels so freaking cool. And it makes you feel kind of badass, because you can just like jump off a building, fly into combat, leap at an enemy with a katana, pull out a shotgun, leap at someone else, go into slow motion and blast them in the face and stuff. Man, it's that whole element as well. It's really, really good. Vehicles and driving, to be honest, it's still a little bit so-so at times. I know they've worked on it and improved it, and I will say it is a chunk better, even though it does still feel iffy sometimes. Overall, it's a chunk better than it was. I remember at launch it was really horrible, and basically motorbikes felt like the only thing you could drive properly. But now it's actually like you can drive the cars and stuff. There was just a few that I felt handled a bit poorly still, but that's a very minor nitpick, because I do have to say, like, overall it's a lot more fun than it used to be. Like, it's a lot more easy to handle the vehicles. Vehicle combat is also a really nice touch. Very nice feature to have, especially with the new police system. Speaking of the police system, I've had so much fun with this now. The police are way better than they used to be. I mean, at launch, it used to be like a police officer would like spawn behind you, regardless of where you were. You could be up on a rooftop or you could be wherever. And the other thing on top of that as well was like, you could walk 100 meters away around a corner and that would be it. They would just stop chasing you. Nothing else would happen. But now it's much more like GTA. You know, the police will actually chase you. They'll try and like run you down basically, and more units of police start, and higher tier units as well. They start to come after you, like the higher your wanted level gets. And eventually if you get like 5 stars, then Max Tac will deploy. And it's really cool. You'll hear like this noise, and then their ship thing comes down, their little like drop ship thing, and then they'll like jump out, and they're like an elite unit, and it's really cool fighting them. And you'll be fighting like an army of police basically. Then you can like run away, and like you can maybe shoot at them from your vehicle and stuff, and then you can go and hide, and then finally they might stop chasing you and you like manage to avoid detection, and finally your wanted level might go away. So that whole loop of gameplay, like that, it is insane how much better it is than what it was at launch. Like for me, it was just like, it's basically what it should have been at launch, but it's so much fun now. And again, it's like a small element of gameplay. Like you might not necessarily engage with it all that often, but when it does happen and you are fighting the police and running from the police, it is so much better now. And again, it's like small things, all these small elements, they just start to come together over time, and they make the experience so much better. So moving on from that, the Cyberware rework, I actually really like this. There's a Cyberware limit now. You increase it by some of the technical ability tree. Some of the perks on that can increase it. There's a couple of them. You can do it by finding Cyberware capacity shards, which sometimes drop from defeated enemies, and also just by leveling up, you'll increase that cap. All the Cyberware options, they kind of adhere to a tier system now, which is also really cool. And it all just feels a lot better to use. And it's been a lot of fun building my character around using heaps of Cyberware. I've enjoyed it. It's another element that they've just improved, and it's made things better. And then on top of that, the clothing system, right? Because another thing with the Cyberware is that now your armor rating, all of that is tied to your Cyberware. There's still a couple of bits of clothing that will give you like 20 armor or 15 armor or 25 armor, again, depending on the tiers of the clothing. But it's much more minor now. And the other thing with that is that, like, because the armor rating is overall tied to your Cyberware, that means, like, for me personally, I can let my passion for fashion run wild, which I love, because, like, something I enjoy in RPGs and stuff, which I've kind of realized over time now, is that I love dressing up my character and, like, coming up with different outfits for how they're going to look and just immersing myself in that aspect of the gameplay. Being able to just, like, set up all my different outfits that I want and not worry about the stats of what I'm wearing, massive improvement for me. Perks as well. The perks have been reworked, basically to be more impactful. So I think there's less of them overall, but their actual effects are a bit more influential to how you'll be playing the game. For me, because it's been so long since I actually played through the game, because back at launch was when I played, like I've mentioned. So playing it now, I'm not sure if I'm imagining it or if it is actually the case, but it does, from what I've experienced, it does seem more impactful, especially for the playstyle I've chosen, and which is that thing I talked about earlier, which is basically I've just been being a really acrobatic cyber samurai. It's again that whole process I talked about. Like, as I've unlocked more perks and I've gotten more gear and stuff, it's just I felt myself becoming more and more of like a cyber samurai badass, and I've just become more and more agile, and the impacts on how I could like move and fight in combat, again, super nice. Like, all of that felt so good. Skills as well. This is another interesting one. The skills, they've reworked as well, and it's all just like passive stuff now. I can't remember I don't even remember exactly how it was implemented at launch. But for some reason, it's the same thing again with the skills, where I've kind of noticed it more this time. Like, as I've kind of unlocked things, because you kind of unlock all the different things depending on what type of, like, depending how you're approaching something, like whether you're shooting people in the head or taking people out silently or like running in with a sword and leaping around. There's the different skills that you'll improve. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know why I'm noticing them more this time. I think they have reworked them a bit, but it's just another thing in combination with the perks, where it's been fun just being like, oh yeah, sweet, I'm nearly at the next tier of this and I'm going to unlock this little benefit of, like, you know, an extra, because there's a couple of them that give you extra perk points, which are definitely worth aiming towards, but then there's also like tiny little things like, you know, 5% less stamina cost or 5% extra movement speed. Little things like that are just really nice bonuses to get. So yeah, another little element that just feels even better than I remember. So yeah, very cool. The music, man, I'm loving the music. I gotta say, the just the different like combat loop music things and just all the beats and everything.
You've no... Back into my...
Very, very cool, very fitting. Some of the quieter moments and sadder moments as well. All of that, like all of the score side of things has been really great. And then on top of that, the radio stations. Again, there's just so many to choose from now. I think they added a few more with 2.0. I've been loving it. My favorite would be Vexelstrom, I would say. Yeah, again, it's just more elements that have just been improved and just... Yeah, the game is freaking good now. I mean, I enjoyed it at launch, but now it's just that step above. So another thing, which is kind of with the performance and stuff, but this is kind of, I want to talk about it in the all-encompassing way, which is that the way they've just tweaked a lot of things, fixed up some UI stuff, everything like gameplay-wise, menu-wise, UI-wise, performance-wise, it all is just feeling really smooth, flowing really well. Even with like occasional dips in frame rate in some graphically intense areas and stuff, even with minor bugs and everything, it's it's just the game is working better than it ever has, and it's pulling me in more. I mean, I still got very pulled into it at launch because I still really enjoyed the story and the storytelling and everything, but I've just been pulled in even more this time around. Other little notes. This is just like a couple of quick things. The car convos are very cool. I still just like riding around in the cars and like having chats with the characters as you're going through the stories. I would also say that it's worth turning off your HUD stuff. There's a lot of HUD elements that you can turn off. I started doing this quite far in from my like 50 hours that I've sort of played. But yeah, it can add even more to the immersion. And yeah, once you start driving around the city without the minimap on, you just start to kind of mentally map out where things are a bit better, and it just feels really cool to be like driving through the city. And because of the scale of it and everything, it's almost like you are in an actual proper city driving from like A to B. Yeah, it's very, very cool. There are a couple of minor UI bugs, which I'm sure they're going to patch. One of them was just that the phone button kept reappearing on my screen even when I had action buttons turned off. That was kind of annoying. I had to keep going back in the menu and turning that off, but I'm sure that'll get fixed. So just a few minor things like that, but definitely worth trying because it can just bring the immersion to that next level. So yeah, overall, basically in conclusion, even with the minor issues that I've had, and sort of the bigger ones like the crashes and that, which I've resolved now, everything that they've got in the game now has just sort of been built up, made better, and it all comes together into a really nice package now. And on top of that, the game really plays to its strengths. And with those little elements, like the police system and everything, that just add the extra immersion overall to the world. Yeah, Cyberpunk just really now, it really sells the world, like with the graphics and everything as well. It really sells the world and the characters and the stories that it wants to tell. And again, the more you play and the more you experience the city, the more anchored you start to feel in it, the more immersive things start to feel. The game can just be incredibly immersive at times. Probably one of the most immersive games I've ever played in some respects, I would say. And yeah, overall, I've had a great time with it so far. And I'm excited to kind of just continue slowly making my way through it all and soaking it all in. I really want to take my time with it. I'm just trying to like slowly go and do everything and do all the side gigs and everything. And yeah, it's a great experience overall. And it's definitely the kind of game that I come back to for additional playthroughs. But that is it for this video. Got a bit rambly again at the end, but I always tend to do that. Thank you to the legends supporting me on Patreon, and thank you for sticking with it and watching this video. Have a good day or night, whichever it may be, and I'll see you in the next video. And also let me know what you think of Cyberpunk 2.0 down in the comments. Alright guys, peace.